And we're live.
Happy live.
Yay. Hi, everybody. Hey, Rachel. Aw. We're so excited you could join us today to talk about insurance and having adequate insurance for your business. Sometimes we got to put that chiropractic hat to the side and put our business hat on our heads. I have been preaching this from the rooftops for years about the importance of covering your assets. And I'm so excited that we're able to lean on our partners at NCMIC to bring you some insurance, bring you information on what is the type of insurance you need to be aware of and what you need to protect your practice. It still blows my mind that 12 years later, we're still having the same conversations about why it's so important to have just premise and malpractice. And there's so much more to it than that. And so I'm super excited. And I want to introduce our two guests today. We have AJ Simpson and we have Abigail Im, who is here with us. Abigail is a senior account executive with NCMIC. And she has been in the insurance business for over 15 years. I know you're like me and you're like, no way, because she doesn't look like she's old enough, but apparently she is. She worked at a Fortune 100 company prior to joining NCMIC, and she specializes in helping doctors manage the risk of their practice through offering the appropriate business insurance solutions to meet their unique needs. She is licensed in commercial lines, personal lines, as well as life insurance. So we're super excited to have y'all here. So Abigail, I'm going to let you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christy, and thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. Happy Tuesday. It is February. We made it through the first month of the year, which is a task in and of itself. So I appreciate all of you guys joining in with me. I am going to share my screen here and go over just some slides in regards to business insurance. And there we go. Hopefully you guys can all see that there. So today we're going to be talking about managing the business risks of your practice. Obviously, there is a lot that goes on with having a practice, opening a practice, managing a practice. And so this is just another one of those things that we don't want to have to think about, but we do. Before I get started, just a quick disclaimer. Please keep in mind that chiropractic practices face many types of risks. We'll cover just a few examples today. We highly recommend that you talk with a licensed insurance professional who can help customize a unique policy for the needs of your practice. And that's just saying that, after the coverages and the policies and the type of things that we talk about today, consult your insurance professional and just make sure that you have the right type of coverage for your practice. So again, my name is Abigail Im. Been with NCMIC for several years now, and I have always been in insurance. It is something that I am passionate about, something that I enjoy doing. And so I'm very excited today to be able to speak with you and to be able to share some information about protecting your practice and making sure that you have the right type of coverage for your practice. So business insurance, fun. What is it? So business owner's policy, also known as a BOP, is a type of policy that can combine some key coverages for your small to medium-sized businesses into one convenient, affordable, customizable package. And I do say affordable. A lot of times when I talk to doctors, they are very surprised that this insurance is not expensive to have, and it is vitally important to protecting your practice. And I'll get into that right now. Why is it important? So, there are a number of reasons why business insurance is important, but some of the top reasons that I feel insurance is important to our doctors is that their business is typically their biggest asset. And Chrissy was talking about protecting your assets. Your practice is something that you have worked very hard to build. You went to college for this, you specialize in this field, this is your career. And so to know that one claim could be enough to hurt your business or maybe even bankrupt your business is almost too much to fathom. So it's very important to protect your biggest asset. It provides legal defense in protecting your reputation. If an allegation claim is against you, even if it's frivolous or there's no merit to it, anyone can bring a claim up at any time. And so just the cost of defending that and protecting your reputation is typically very expensive. But it's not expensive if you have that coverage. It's honestly not. And so this is just an inexpensive way for our small business owners to protect their practice, and it's something you really can't afford not to have. So, how does your practice's business structure impact insurance decisions? And I see in my field all different types of businesses. I see independent contractors or 1099s that are with a large practice and just contracted for their work. So they don't have any equipment, they don't have a lot of risk, but they are still their own business and they still can be sued if someone gets injured. Some other things that I see are um, sole proprietors, corporations, LLCs, or you have doctors that are subleasing space from other doctors. You have corporations that buy and own a practice and maybe even have multiple practice locations. So there's no one size fits all when it comes to your practice and when it comes to your business. And that's why it's important that you have an expert to help walk you through the process of protecting your business based on how your business is set up. So the first thing that we'll walk into here is going to be business liability, general liability, slip and fall. It is known by many names, but essentially it is protecting the liability side of your business. So general liability can help to cover bodily injury or property damage that a business may have if somebody slips and falls and gets injured, or if there's an employee accident that you're held legally liable for. It can also help to cover advertising injury, which would be somebody claiming that you are defaming them or another company. It can help to cover copyright infringement from using somebody else's work in your ads, whether or not you know that that's copyright infringement. If you don't have their permission to use pictures, media, work, they can come after you and they can serve you with a cease and desist. Reputational harm. So if you said something in an interview about another business owner that negatively impacted their business or their company. And I will say that liability claims are very common. They can come up during normal business operations. They can get very expensive for small business owners to handle, but they are very common. And many don't have the resources to be able to cover a liability claim on their own. I would say on average, a cost of a slip and fall would be 20,000, and if you're faced with a reputational harm lawsuit, it would more than likely be around 50,000. So liability coverage for your business would come directly out of your pocket. And imagine if you're just a small independent contractor in a large practice having to absorb those costs. Another aspect of business liability is the medical expense coverage. And this is a coverage which helps to pay for persons injured for their medical expenses, regardless of who's at fault. A couple of examples of how the liability insurance protects you is we had a doctor that had an older patient who did slip and fall, and on the way down, her phone fell out of her pocket and it broke. And so not only did it cause both a bodily injury, it caused property damage as well. And the patient was able to be compensated by the carrier because our doctor had a reputational company that was behind them and was taking care of those costs. Another example is damage to the premise that's rented to you. So if you are leasing a space, let's say that you leave a coffee pot on and burn the building down and it catches fire to the real estate office next door. Who's going to be responsible for those damages? You will be. And so in this case, your liability coverage will come into play and cover the damage to the premise that's rented to you. So we've talked about a lot with the liability. I'll go back to the advertising injury and an example on how this can be something that's impactful to you. We had a doctor who was investing in growing their business online, like a lot of us are. They were using social media to get out and to reach their customers and to let people know what they were doing, post updates, just build and grow the awareness. And they had received a review from a client who had stated that their office was unprofessional and they didn't want to help with the injury. And the doctor replied to the comment thinking that they were doing the right thing by acknowledging those concerns. And they said that the customer was rude and impatient and it was impossible to satisfy a crazy client. I know. It doesn't, when you look back and you think about it, that probably wasn't the right way to respond. But they did, and they were sued for $500,000 due to libel and intentional infliction of emotional distress. And thankfully, that was part of the policy as we see here, where they were able to utilize their general liability coverage to help with the expenses associated with defending these allegations. So again, this is very common in the day to day where things can just come up. They could be misinterpreted, they could be taken the wrong way. And you would be responsible for taking care of those. So it's important that you have the right protection in place so that that's not, all on you. So talking about the general liability, how does it work if a doctor is selling nutritional supplements or other types of products in their office? Which we do see this often where doctors have name brand supplements in their practice. So if a doctor is selling zinc or vitamin C, and they prescribe that right then and there, there's a nice component to the general liability, as you can see here. That's the product's completed operations, which is a form of insurance protecting you from lawsuits alleging property damage or injury due to your product. This is very important when a practice is providing patients with supplements that they have that completed operations coverage. One thing I do want to note, though, is that if any doctors are putting on their own label or manufacturing their own products, which we do see a lot of doctors who have their own line of nutritional supplements or manufacture their own, foam rollers that they created, that they are going to need to get product liability. This is a separate policy and it is separate coverage, but it is so vital to have that you're then protected from creating and putting your name on your own products and putting your name behind products that you offer. So a couple of key components here, but typically if you're just selling name brand supplements, it's included in the liability. If you're creating and manufacturing your own, putting your name behind something, product liability is that coverage that you'll really want to get to protect that. Awesome. So the liability portion, the general liability, the slip and fall, whatever you want to call it, that is obviously an option for the business insurance. Now, another key component to the business owner's policy is going to be property coverage. This can only be gotten with a business owner's policy. So if you have just general liability covering a slip and fall, which you might, if you're a 1099 in a larger practice, you don't have any of your own equipment, you may not need a business owner's policy. But a true business owner's policy, it's typically not a big cost difference, and you're going to get a much wider range of coverage. So if you own a building, if you lease, if you sublease your office, you're likely going to need property coverage. This is most common for our doctors to have a full service practice where they have their own equipment, they have their own assets, and they've built their practice from the ground up. So we just talked about protecting yourself from the liability. The property aspect is covering the physical assets of your property. So, business personal property coverage provides protection to replace your property you use in the course of your chiropractic practice if it's damaged by an event such as fire or water damage from a broken pipe. What do you do to determine how much business personal property you have or how much coverage you need? So, think about tables, computers, diagnostic equipment. Essentially, if you were to take the roof off of your practice, turn it upside down, and shake it, everything that falls out is your business personal property. So that is what all you want to have covered. And this is typically covered at replacement cost with like, kind, and quality. So even if you grabbed one from a buddy for, $2,000, we would replace it with a brand new table if something, heaven forbid, were to happen. The next thing to think about is going to be if you own your building. If you own your building, your needs are going to be quite a bit different. So we're talking about the whole structure that you're caring for. There are a number of different scenarios that could arise from owning a building. So you could plan to occupy that full space. You could be renting some of that space to other tenants. And now they're responsible for, you're responsible for the whole physical building and structure, even if they're renting out a portion of it. Any completed additions, permanent fixtures. So in this case, coverage would extend to the building itself for a covered loss. And then one common request that we do see all the time is if you're financing a piece of equipment, you're financing a building, if you're purchasing an existing practice, usually the company will want to be listed on your policy as a loss payee. Now, I know that sounds scary, but it's actually a very common request. It is just them saying that if something were to happen, that they want to be compensated for that loan that they provided. And it's really easy to add that to a policy if that's what they request. And another common thing that we see all the time, very common again, is if you are leasing space from a company, they may ask to be listed as an additional insured on the policy. This is just them being able to show that you're maintaining coverage per your lease, that you're protecting yourself from these liability risks that may arise. And so again, it's very easy to add them. It's very common. This is absolutely something to expect whenever you're leasing space and you're getting this type of coverage for your practice. Now, let's say that an unexpected physical loss like a fire causes some pretty extensive damage to your building, and now your practice is going to be closed for an extended period of time, right? You've worked hard with ChiroHealthUSA to make sure that you have built a nice, profitable, wonderful practice, and you want to maintain that. There is a wonderful coverage that is included with the property. It's called business income expense. And essentially, it is very important to protect your ability to maintain a profitable practice when the unexpected happens. And so the business income helps to replace your income, covered expenses like rent, payroll, other financial responsibilities while your property is being repaired or replaced due to a direct physical covered loss. And it isn't something that you'll be covered under the professional or what we just went over, that general liability piece. This is specific to a business owner's policy. And so it can also help to pay for an additional space if you have to rent a temporary location while your building is being repaired, or advertising if you have to get a new location altogether. So a great benefit that's included in the business owner's policy to keep your business running as normal when the unexpected happens. So there are some optional coverages available that we are very familiar with the chiropractic practices and their needs. So we typically always include, but they are optional. So you want to make sure if it's the right fit for your business, your practice. And so some of these endorsements is going to be the hired and non-owned auto, as you can see here. And this would just be, um, it's triggered if there are accidents involving autos that are either hired, such as, or borrowed, such as rental cars, or employee-owned vehicles used for work. So let's say, for example, you have an employee that runs a check to the bank and gets into an accident. This coverage can help step in where personal auto insurance typically would not cover that. And it is optional. So again, it can be added, it can be removed. It's something that you don't have to have for your business. And then a big one that we hear a lot about because we work with chiropractic professionals is going to be this cyber and data breach coverage. Now, cyber and data breach coverage are used kind of synonymously. They're very interchangeable in the fact that people can say one or the other, but they are very different type of coverages. And so it's important whenever you're looking at your policy to know, do you have data breach? Do you have true cyber liability? Do you have a separate policy that covers both of them together? What does that look like? And so cyber and data breach coverages, they are very different in providing different benefits. Data breach can help respond to a breach if personally identifiable information or personal health information gets lost or stolen, whether it's from a hacker breaking into your network or an employee accidentally leaving their laptop at a restaurant, etc. If your practice is the victim of a breach, data breach can help to notify patients and employees, hire a PR firm, and provide credit monitoring services to victims. The cyber liability, it's different and it's something that we recommend for most practices. In addition to the data breach coverage we discussed, it also helps to cover financial losses due to cyber attacks or other tech related risks, as well as privacy investigations for lawsuits following an attack. So, for example, if a hacker locks your computer and starts deleting files and demands ransomware in order to get those files back, this insurance can help to respond to the attack and help your business recover the lost files and income. Cyber liability insurance can help to cover the legal services to help meet most state and federal regulations. And it can also do notification expenses to alert affected customers, extortion pay to recover the locked files in a ransomware attack, lost income from network outage, lawsuits related to customers or employees' privacy and security, or regulatory fines from state and federal agencies. So most insurance companies can add data breach, which helps to protect your business from the cost of threats and attacks to a business policy. Cyber liability insurance is a separate policy, but it provides, as you can see here, just a much larger range of coverage. So again, if you have a small amount added to your business insurance, it can absolutely help, again, with the notification, with the cost of PR firms, with credit monitoring. So it's a great coverage to have. But you can purchase a larger, more comprehensive cyber liability policy, which obviously when you're dealing with a large amount of customer data, you have the HIPAA Privacy Act that you have to follow. This just helps to protect your practice from those type of claims and lawsuits. Well, let's see. Workers' compensation. We are flying through here. Now, this is a separate type of policy, and this is separate coverage altogether. But one thing that we have is a lot of doctors have employees, and as your practice grows, this almost becomes a necessity. So there are a couple of employee-related topics that I will specifically touch on, and the first one is going to be this workers' compensation policy. These are required in most states. The policies are carried by the employer to provide benefits to their employees should they be injured due to an accident or a sickness that is job related. This coverage is a safety net for employees that provides medical benefits, income benefits, rehabilitation benefits, death benefits, and employer liability. So the medical benefits would include reasonable medical expenses that are needed to treat a work-related illness or injury. The income benefits help to provide a portion of the employee's lost earnings for a time if they're not able to work due to the work-related illness or injury. The rehabilitation benefits would be basically anything associated with the rehabilitation, therapy, services, equipment, etc. Death benefits would include a burial allowance as well as income benefits to the spouse or the children of the employee. And then the employer's liability is provided to help protect the employer in the event of a lawsuit being filed by a third party, such as a spouse. And then one important decision with workers' compensation that an owner needs to make is whether or not they want to be included in coverage as the owner. It is completely optional, but it can provide important coverage to the individual owner, especially in the event that they don't have a separate long-term disability policy or health insurance policy or something to cover for their lost earnings while they're not able to practice due to a disability. And of course, the big question, what does workers' compensation coverage cost? And just like most insurance, it does vary depending on a number of factors. But for workers' compensation specifically, it would be the type of job, the payroll, and the state in which the business is operating. So the workers' compensation is priced by applying a job classification code to each $100 of payroll, which will result in uh, uh, the the factors that vary industry to industry. And so, for example, if you have a roofer, they're going to have a much higher factor than, say, a doctor or someone doing physician or clerical work because their likelihood of sustaining an injury is more likely and potentially more severe. And so the work comp policy is issued. Whenever it's issued, you would use estimated payroll figures up front because you don't know. I mean, there could be raises, there could be people being let go or moving to different positions. And so it's all estimated, which would result in a mandatory policy audit at the end of the term. If you overestimated your premium up front, then you would be due for a refund. And if you underestimated it, then the insurance company would just bill you for the difference. So it'd be very simple to figure out. Now, workers' compensation, again, the requirements vary state to state. And usually it's required in all states in some capacity, but even if your state doesn't require you to carry it, it's always a good idea to protect both yourself as well as your employees. And another employee-related insurance is going to be the employment practices liability insurance. EPLI, EPL. It can be referred to by a lot of different things. Again, just with insurance, a lot of these terms seem to be interchangeable, and that's okay. It's not a one size fits all, and it's very customizable to your practice. So, your insurance agent will usually know what you're talking about if you just try to tell them what it is that you're looking to get covered. So, the employment practices liability insurance provides coverage for defense costs for damages related to various employment type claims, such as allegations of wrongful termination, discrimination, workplace harassment, retaliation. Employees can bring a claim against you regardless, again, if there's any merit to it. And you may have a disgruntled employee who found out that an associate makes more than they do, or they feel that they were being treated unfairly at work, or maybe they just took something that you said in the wrong manner. Any of these things can happen, and so just making sure that you're protecting yourself against these allegations and claims can help to steer you in the right direction and give you some peace of mind so that you can hire employees without worrying about, what type of allegation may come up. Again, limited employment practices liability can be added to your business insurance, or a separate and more comprehensive policy is obviously recommended, and it can be something that can be purchased, and it might be a right fit for a larger practice that has multiple employees. So, in closing, I hear from a lot of doctors who are frequently looking for a general liability policy, and they're really surprised to find out how affordable it is. I just want to stress this and take this home, that insurance is not expensive, especially for your practice. I have the opportunity, thankfully, of working with chiropractic practices all day. That's all that, NCMIC insures is our chiropractic professionals. And so I'm very familiar with the practice. I look at, small 1099 independent contractors, and I also work with large practices that have franchises or multiple practice locations. And it is really affordable to protect your business. And that's something a lot of doctors are just surprised to find. And then the great thing again about the business insurance is that it is customizable to fit a variety of industries and businesses. So you can add the data breach to it, you can add the employee dishonesty, you can add employment practices liability, just any of those additional endorsements to customize it to fit your practice. It makes it a great fit for most chiropractic offices. And then, again, we work with this every single day. We're very familiar with it. And so it's given us a good chance to help consult, work with, and just help our doctors to identify their specific needs and take care of those. So with that said, thank you for joining in the webinar. I hope that you found it informative and beneficial. I would like to open us up, Christy, if I can, to questions at this time. And while those are coming through, if you would like to learn more about the business owner's policy, the cyber liability, the workers' compensation, my contact information is listed here. We also have additional educational content and videos at nickmick.com/resources. And we do have our podcast, The Chiropractical, which you can get wherever you get podcasts. And then you are welcome to follow us on social media. We love our doctors. We do everything that we can to support and to give back into the industry.
Thank you so much, Abigail. We do have a couple of questions. The first one is, do y'all offer E&O, errors and omissions insurance policies?
We absolutely do. So NCMIC is a direct writer for the chiropractic malpractice. And then our insurance services, so where I am within our agency, we can write anything outside of the chiropractic scope. Typically, we're able to place that. And so errors and omissions is often another term referred to by malpractice, just depending on what field or industry you're in. So it could be called professional liability. It could be called errors and omissions. It could be called malpractice, but it's covering you professionally in the services that you're providing against a claim or allegation of negligence.
Okay, so the next question is, I currently do billing for the doctor's office and have to transcribe his notes. What if I type something wrong and he doesn't catch it? Would that error be caught under E&O insurance policy? So I guess if they transcribed something incorrectly and it was an error that was submitted to a bill to the insurance company, would their errors and omissions cover that kind of error?
So the errors and omissions would more so be if it would be very similar to the malpractice if someone were to claim that there was negligence for you in your profession. Um, I don't know if there was a billing error necessarily what that would look like, if that would be something that would be caught in an audit, and maybe that would be an audit billing type of question. But it would not, I mean,
The majority of the time, what I've seen in those situations would be that would be something that typically would fall under the doctor's malpractice or the doctor's E&O, because essentially they're ultimately responsible for what they're signing off on, regardless of who transcribed the notes or took those notes. So I don't know that that would be something that the individual transcribing the notes would need to have an E&O policy for, but that should fall under the professional liability on the malpractice side, because again, ultimately the doctor is responsible for what they're signing off on and what they're submitting.
right. And one big thing that I do want to bring up in addition to that, thank you, AJ, is that the when you have malpractice, to make sure that you are adding your entity or having your entity insured as well in some way, because we do have a lot of times where a doctor will call in to get business insurance on their entity and they don't have their entity listed on their malpractice, or vice versa. They'll add their entity to their malpractice, but they won't get their entity covered for business insurance. And so just making sure that when you have that professional entity that you're covering it in all realms. And then that way, if you have employees under that entity that need to be included in coverage, that they have the proper coverage.
And I think one of the biggest things that we see just at events and talking to providers and their teams is that there's a lot of confusion as to what should be covered under different insurance policies, how it should be listed. And a lot of times we have people who will say, well, I think that's covered under my malpractice, or I think that's covered by this insurance policy. And my suggestion to anybody listening to this, either live now or on the recording, is you don't want to think it's covered. You want to know that you're covered. So reach out to your insurance company and ask them and know for sure if it is covered, and if so, by how much. Because I will say, with your malpractice, a lot of times malpractice does cover quite a bit of different things, but it has limited limits on those things. Am I correct, AJ and Abigail?
Yes.
Yeah, and that is a great point. And that's, again, I think what we're really trying to do is just build that awareness that if you have a question, remember, your insurance company works for you. Your agent works for you. We're here to answer your questions and provide that kind of guidance. So, that's something that we just always encourage doctors, that if they do have any questions, just to make sure to reach out. And, unfortunately, there are some gray areas that fall in between the different policies, and it may be something that we need to do a little bit more research or dig into the specifics of the policies to identify where specifically it may fall. But again, I think it's better for doctors to be well-informed consumers and understand what they're purchasing and understand where that exposure is going to fall, whether it's general liability, whether it's the malpractice, whether it's a separate policy that they may need to obtain.
Okay, so our next question is, we purchase liquid vitamins and the company puts the doctor's name on it. So I'm guessing it's white labeled to the doctor of practice. We're not the ones creating it or manufacturing it, but should we have some type of insurance to protect us by offering these nutritional products?
Great question. Great question. Absolutely. This is the time and this is the place where you would want to get that product liability, because at the end of the day, that customer sees that bottle and they see your name. If something goes wrong, if they have a reaction, they don't know or care who manufactured it, who made it, you're taking on a lot of risk by putting your name on it. And so you need to make sure that you have that proper coverage to help protect you from a claim that would arise in that case.
That is such a fantastic question.
So
My
wonderful.
mom and I actually just had this conversation because she's about to white label nutritional supplements for her own office. She's not a chiropractor, but I was like, Mom, I think you need to talk to your insurance, because I think you really need something to protect you in case somebody has some kind of reaction. And that thought had never even crossed her mind.
And it's not uncommon by any means. We have a lot of doctors that have their own line of, diet pills, or, they created specifically a special foam roller. It's not uncommon by any means. And so, it's not the wrong thing to do, but you do want to make sure that you've talked to your insurance agent and that you have that product liability to protect you from anything, any claims that may come up, somebody having an adverse reaction, if there's a product recall, whatever the case may be, you're at that point responsible for those things.
Okay, so our next question. Okay, so if they have malpractice under NCMIC, but they have business insurance with another insurance carrier, do they need to reach out to you, Abigail, if they want to get a quote for all of their insurance to have it under one umbrella, or is there somebody else they should reach out to?
They can reach out to me. Absolutely. I handle all of our insurance within our in-house agency. And so we are very happy to either use existing declarations pages, or we just complete a one-page quick intake form. Again, we work with chiropractic offices all day, so we're very familiar with the practice, and we really try to make it easy for our doctors. And then we also are an insurance broker. And so we shop it with multiple carriers to get them the best policy at the best price. And because we only insure chiropractors, we're usually given special pricing because our carriers love chiropractors. They're very low risk. They're very easy to work with. And so it's just a great opportunity for us to take a look at it for you. And even if you choose to stay with your carrier, that's no problem at all. It doesn't hurt just to check.
And I will just add one quick clarification. Typically, the malpractice and like the business owner's policies will be separate policies. Unfortunately, we don't really have the means to have, I guess, one overarching policy that's going to cover all the different exposures. With NCMIC, the malpractice insurance is written by NCMIC directly, and then our agency works on the business owner's policies and looks at our carrier relationships throughout the country and finds the best carrier with the best price and the best coverage to meet the doctor's needs for their business owners, general liability, et cetera. But we do handle the malpractice, directly, but they will be separate policies, unfortunately.
Well, and I guess I should have clarified. When I basically said under one umbrella, it meant really under one roof.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Yeah. No, and that's, we can definitely help out with that. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't telling folks that we'll just get them one policy that's overarching and covering everything.
But it is nice to have one company to call. We offer a lot of services just in our doctor's day-to-day practices. We have the credit card processing. We have our miles away credit card. We have equipment financing. So it's nice to just have one place that you call for everything. And we'd love to be that place. We love to be that resources. That we love our doctors, and we will do whatever we can to make it just a smooth, simple, easy process for them.
And I would love to add to that, whoever you have your insurance with, NCMIC has incredible resources on their website. Yeah. Great blog posts. Chiropractical, the podcast, is absolutely phenomenal. And so regardless of insurance, we take care of our own. Their tagline means they take care of chiropractic. And all of that stuff is available to you on their website without you having to log into anything to access stuff. Incredible blog posts. I go on there all the time looking for resources. And I have to say that, I've had some of the best conversations with all of the representatives from NCMIC when I have questions from everything on a sexual harassment question that I got from one of my practices to insurance, or what to do when somebody wants to dismiss a patient from the practice because for whatever reason. And every one of those questions gets answered. And there's, like I said, there's so many resources. They're incredibly helpful. And if you're not visiting their website on a regular basis, listening to this podcast, which again, phenomenal, you can get it on your little Apple podcast. But you really should check it out because you learn so much all of the time. Okay, so next question. This is from Angela, who's a biller. Can someone come after her personally for an errors and omissions, not necessarily regarding billing, but more so for the reports that she does for attorneys in a P&I case?
AJ, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, that That may be one, Angela, if we could get your contact information, maybe something we should maybe reach out directly just to learn a little bit more. Because I personally haven't seen that. I think that's very rare, but with that said, I never say never that something couldn't happen, but typically they're not going to come after an individual personally for something like that. But again, that may be something that we can kind of talk through some more specific scenarios and work through that directly with you if that works. And if you would like to reach out to Abigail, and then we can kind of get together and talk through that, that would be great.
Wonderful. And Angela said, wait a minute, do we have to have coverage for dismissing patients? And the answer is no. However, every state is different, and some states have your boards of examiners have very specific rules about how to do this. This question actually came up when I was teaching in Florida on sexual harassment, but it's a different twist. It's what happens when patients sexually harass a doctor and the staff. Very uncomfortable situation. I have learned so much in the last couple of months. Heck, I've cried with people outside of a convention hall when they tell me their stories. And the bottom line is that somebody in your office is being sexually harassed. Obviously, you want to put an end to that behavior. And one of the things that I will say that NCMIC and the FCLB, Federation of Chiropractic Licensing Boards, and the National Board of Chiropractic Examiners, we had a conversation about what to do in this situation. And if you have NCMIC, and I'm sure this is the same with any insurance company, but if you have NCMIC for your malpractice, for sure, you can call into them. They will provide you with a letter to quit your patient. And that actually came out of a conversation when we spoke in front of 1,200 people about what to do in this situation. Did I mention that they have so many incredible resources outside of insurance? Well,
Christy, you are right on about, I would just encourage anyone, just remember your malpractice carrier, whether it's NCMIC or somebody else, is there, for you. So I would definitely, before releasing any patients, getting into that, definitely call and utilize the resources at your disposal. And our claims staff is fantastic at NCMIC, and I know they talk to doctors all the time about that and provide them with the appropriate forms, letters, ways to document things, just to make sure that, again, all of their assets are being covered.
Absolutely. Like I said, it was just really interesting that we did this we had this panel discussion on sex, and I stopped and I was talking to a member of the national board and a member of FCLB because I wanted to know how to handle this, because it could potentially become a board nightmare. And a lot of the reasons that doctors told me they didn't release patients from their practice is because they were worried about retaliation. So we walked over to the NCMIC booth and we're like, hey, by the way, what should we do in this situation? And they were super helpful. So I want to encourage all of you too, because y'all are all over the country. NCMIC is at almost every event. At least they're always there when we're there. So if you see them at an event, go up to them and ask them these questions. They're incredibly informative, whether it's Lori or Emily or Jackie or whoever. And I'm forgetting a lot of people, but whoever's in that booth, if they can't answer your question, they're going to connect you with somebody who absolutely can answer that question for you. So don't just think that it has to be about malpractice. And it's, again, you don't just want to think that you're covered. You just don't want to put yourself at risk. You need to know that you have adequate coverage to cover your assets, to protect your business, and protect your license. There's no sense in having unnecessary liability and welcoming it through your front door. And is this going to be in the archives for a rewatch? Now, girl, it is. On top of that, in an hour, everybody's going to who registered today is going to get a link to watch the recording. It will live on forever. So I'm just going to show my screen really quick. I just want to remind you too, we didn't talk about it today, but if you don't have audit insurance, we strongly recommend that this is something that you consider. You can go on our website at ChiroHealthUSA.com to learn about CHUSA Defense, and it gives you a number where you can contact NCMIC to receive a quote on that, or you can fill out this form to request a quote, free quote, and somebody will contact you about that policy. We also want to remind you about next week's webinar, Planning Patient Events with Dr. Hillary Hushauer. Let me just tell y'all, I heard her speak live and in person, and the impact she's having on her community is mind blown. It's amazing how one simple thing in an effort to just get to know a new community where she was opening up her office essentially made her the event planning queen for her entire community. And as a result of that, which was not why she started it, but it is helping to grow her practice. And it has helped to educate an entire community about chiropractic, but not one single event she hosts has anything to do with chiropractic. People do business with people they like. In her community, they love her. So for very little money, she's going to talk to you about what you can do to get to know the people that are living within your communities and hopefully convert them into new patients. Then we're going to take a week off because we're doing this webinar right before we leave for Parker, Vegas. If you're there, I encourage you to stop by our booth and come and say hi. We have a really awesome 2022 t-shirt that we're releasing next weekend in Vegas, coming to cities near you at future events. Then we're going to take the week off when we get back from Vegas because it's Parker Vegas and it's exhausting. And plus everybody who went to Parker Vegas is going to be playing catch up, seeing patients. And then we're going to come back the next week with Dr. Im to hear about how to work and collaborate with MDs and OBs. And then we also have Dr. Jay Greenstein and Brad Koss talking about driving greater cash flow with data. So y'all know me and my compliance loving hearts. I don't try to make y'all love it. I just try to educate y'all on what you should know. But one of the really cool things that I read, because I like to read the OIG reports that come out every year, especially their budget report, like how much money are they investing in audits and investigations? Lots of it, like millions of dollars. But what's really interesting, it's also because it's a cash cow. Like this is like a greater return on investment than casinos. But they're investing so much money into AI and information technology. They know more about your practice than you do. And what they released in last year's budget while they were asking for more money in AI and IT was because in a matter of hours, they could detect fraud and abuse in what used to take them months to get. And in fact, it helped them to come down on one of the nation's largest opioid rings in a matter of hours. So what we're going to talk about is how do we own our data? How do we know what they know about us? And then how do we use that information to fight for a better reimbursement and better coverage, not just for your practice, but for your patients? It's going to be a phenomenal webinar. So it's a must attend. And again, I know some of y'all don't have time to be here or can't make it work for the live. Just make sure you register for those to attend, and we'll send you a link to the recordings. There's the link to join that. And lastly, we are bringing back the Discount Challenge 2.0. I don't know if y'all remember right before the pandemic, we did the initial discount challenge. And in fact, one doctor in Virginia won over $11,000. And this year we're giving away $15,024. It's really important. We want to make sure that you understand how to offer discounts correctly in your office, being able to offer affordable care to your patients without putting your practice at risk. So all you have to do is take the quiz. And there are 10 questions. Just click take the challenge. 10 questions. For every question you get right, that is one entry into the drawing, which will be held in November. So if you only get 5 right the first time, take it again, because you can max out at 10 and take it as many times as you want to. If you're going to be in Vegas or an event coming soon, show us your score. Doesn't matter if you get a 0%, but show us your score and you'll get the new 2022 ChiroHealthUSA t-shirt, which if you're a comic book person, it kind of has a comic book theme this year. It's super cool. I want to show you, but I can't. Not until next week. Well, in 2 weeks. I can show y'all on earrings, but it has to be unveiled and live and in person first. It's a secret. Oh, Emily's on here. I love you, Emily, and I miss you so much, and I can't wait to see you in Vegas next week. Emily's with NCMIC also. She's fantastic, and I love her. Anyway, we're wrapping up a few minutes early, and y'all know my rule, and that is you have 10 more minutes blocked on your schedule before you have to see patients. Keep your door closed. Don't let your team know that you're done early. Sit back, kick up your feet, breathe in, breathe out, enjoy some peace before you jump back in it, and change the world for all those patients in your community. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day and a fantastic week. And I can't wait to see you next week. Same time, same place with Dr. Hillary. Bye, y'all.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone.